Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Fronteras, a changing America, at its new time on KRWG Public Media. I'm Casey Counts. Among the many federally funded organizations and programs across the country facing funding cuts are America's libraries. President Donald Trump signed an executive order in March to eliminate the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is dedicated to funding libraries across the country. While the order is being challenged in court, its implications are rippling through community libraries, including in our region. NMSU cataloging librarian and associate professor Aubrey Iglesias joins us to discuss the issue. But first, KRWG Public Media fellow Abigail Salas went to a local rural library to highlight some of the issues they face while trying to continue serving the community.
Retired librarian Ida Garcia is just one of the many volunteers working to start a library in Chaparral. Chaparral is one of the largest unincorporated communities in New Mexico, and Garcia said having a public library accessible to the rest of the community can make a difference.
We need a public library so that the students can come in here, work, do projects, read, do research. Maybe even our younger kids can come in and check out books, and we really need to encourage reading.
Garcia and volunteers have been working with the county to try to get the library up and running, but it hasn't been as easy as they expected.
It just seems like there's lack of communication, lack of planning, and a lot of barriers, roadblocks, and delays in everything we request.
According to Garcia, the library is lacking many resources, including enough shelving and non-volunteer staff.
Because if you look around, we have a lot of books. And also you're going to notice that we have a lot of books in boxes because there is not enough shelving that was provided when the facility was built.
District 3 County Commissioner Shannon Reynolds said he understands people are frustrated with the progress of the library project.
Well, the community is frustrated, as you would think. Let's start with that. Frustration starts when you want something and it doesn't happen. And so they've been frustrated with the idea that it's taken so long.
Doña Ana County's Health and Human Services Department oversees the library project at the Dolores Wright Community Center in the Colonia. Jamie Michael, County Health and Human Services Director, said they already offer classes and summer lunch programs at the center, so resources are spread thin for the library project.
So there are a lot of different priorities that counties are responsible for, and libraries are not one of the priorities, so this was never on the county's list of programs. That's why we are relying on volunteers. They really wanted the library there. It is going to be volunteer run with some support from the county. Again, leveraging the existing resources that we have and we're already dedicated to the resource center in that community.
According to Michael, the county has also provided computers for the library and will have staff overseeing the use of them. She also said there may be computer training and literacy activities in the future.
We have computers out there available for community members to use. We have tutoring for young kids that's already happening at the community center. So again, now having that space, the library space, will just bolster all of the activities that are already happening there.
Michael acknowledged that planning for this project can be a challenge because the library is an extension of the Community Resource Center.
It's nice that we have such an active group of volunteers that are willing to work with us, and we are trying to balance. It's not a public library, it's not a designated library because the county doesn't have those resources.
Libraries in rural areas may provide important services for the communities they serve. According to a report done by the Institute of Museum and Library Services, libraries identify gaps in services in the community and provide opportunities to bridge them. For example, a library may help provide more resources like healthcare, education, and community programs. Shel Nymark is director of the New Mexico Rural Library Initiative.
Well, in a lot of small communities, libraries are the only services that are happening in those towns.
According to County Commissioner Shannon Reynolds, those services are key to building trust in Chaparral.
And the library, I think, is a good first moniker to put in to show people that we do care and we are trying to provide services that they want.
Ida Garcia said the need is there.
It wouldn't have been built if we didn't need it.
But she holds high hopes for the future of this project.
I wanted to be able to be used not only for checking out books, using computers, making copies, faxing materials. It should be, something that the community can come in here and do what they need to do.
Volunteers and county officials said they will continue to work together to find common ground so the library can meet the needs of the community. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Abigail Salas.
We'll have much more on the challenges facing rural libraries with our guest, NMSU cataloging librarian and associate professor Aubrey Iglesias. Aubrey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Casey. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, let's start by getting a little bit about your background. Why did you become a librarian?
Oh, I didn't know that was going to be one of my questions. Well, I kind of fell into it, and suddenly I realized when I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, where have you spent most of your time? It's been in libraries. So I went to get my master's of library science, and it's just been fun since then. I've worked in many different types of libraries, in public, government, as well as now academic.
And I understand it's not just libraries that's a love of yours, but also languages.
Well, I did live in Germany for about 10 years, so that's where I met my husband. So at home, we are a multilingual family. He and I speak our version of German. He's from Spain. He speaks Spanish to our kids. I speak English to the kids. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, let's start out by kind of talking about the structure. What is the IMLS and what does it do?
The IMLS is a federal agency. It's the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and they provide the administration of the largest source of federal funding for support for library services in the United States. And that is another acronym, LSTA, which is the Library Services and Technology Act Grant.
So we have lots of sources, different sources and different programs that are funded federally. I read that the Grants to States program alone administers $180 million to libraries across the country. And of course, in the spring, President Donald Trump wrote an executive order to end funding for the IMLS. So we can only imagine that it's hundreds of millions of dollars that libraries stand to lose. Why don't you talk a little bit about what the impact of that would be?
Well, especially on New Mexico in our region, currently we have been receiving funds of $1.8 million from federal funding for LSTA for the state of New Mexico, and again that's been annual. And so now with really the attempt to shutter IMLS, that funding is seen to go away in the future. So when I talked to the state librarian in of New Mexico, Eli Guinea, he explained the situation very vividly. So again, that $1.8 million, we currently in the state of New Mexico are using it last into I think October of 2026. But after that, he doesn't foresee us having these funds. So I'd love to talk about what that entails and how the impacts would be in New Mexico when that money is gone.
We'll definitely get into that. Obviously, there are efforts to keep that from happening. 21 states, including New Mexico, joined a lawsuit to prevent the executive order from taking place. And of course, we don't necessarily expect a quick resolution to that. What do you know in terms of the fight against this action?
Well, it's rather complicated. As you know, I imagine there's a lot of litigation going on for funding and for all different types of agencies. So sometimes you might not hear a lot on the national press necessarily about library specifics when we have funding cuts from federal agencies on so many different levels. But the American Library Association is a great source to look for the most current actions going on with litigation regarding libraries and funding. You did mention that about the litigation with, I think it's 21 state attorneys that are trying to have that overturned and have IMLS brought back to life. And the American Library Association has also teamed with other groups in litigation too. So that's still ongoing, and hopefully it'll be a great outcome. I should mention perhaps that in previous years, the current administration, when the current administration was the administration the first term, there were attempts to also shutter IMLS, but bipartisan support kept funding levels not only what they're originally allocated for, but they increased allocation in the past. So I'm really hoping that this is not the end of IMLS, that it continues and strengthens.
In the meantime, libraries are in limbo a little bit in terms of what can be expected for the future. So I want to talk a little bit about, for now, what services libraries provide that people who maybe don't frequent their community library might not know about.
There's a lot of services. Technology, for example. Using computers, technology and instruction, printing, photocopying. That happens a lot at libraries. Tons of programming. Think of public libraries, especially the summer reading programs for students. But there also are a plethora of other programs throughout the year for adults and all ages. And public libraries are just one type of library, right? I mean, I work at NMSU, so academic libraries also supply a lot of support, research services, also programming for the communities. And if I may, I talked to several libraries within the region to make sure I could highlight some of their interesting programming. If I may say a few programming things and activities going on in our region.
Sure, let's talk a little bit about the libraries that you spoke to.
Okay, very good. There are lots of services. One that comes to mind is the Thomas Brannigan Memorial Library in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Something really cool that they're doing is the Library of Things. It's basically you're able to check out various tools, baking supplies, art activities, art supplies from the library. They also have a maker space. So it's not just about the services that they provide, but it's also those interpersonal connections. They're so important for the communities we serve.
I need to go see if I can get a stand mixer.
I don't think I saw that because I'm in need of one as well. Baking forms. Do you need to cut a hole in leather?
Why not?
Okay. And then some other programming. Bayard Public Library, which is outside of Silver City. They have a library park, and that's with native plants, to which they've recently added a vegetable garden. And then they just recently finished up a program. They had hosted a week-long summer program called Nature Discovery Camp for, I think, 6th through 8th graders. And then, and I'll try to hurry, Silver City has, of course, children's activities and technology assistance that they thought was so important for the communities they serve, and also the digital services, e-books, downloadable films. And then a quick quote I'd like to throw in, if I may.
Go right ahead. From whom?
This is from Silver City Public Library, the administrator there, that it's the daily interactions in the building, they also make a big difference for the community. And she talked about that they offer courtesy and respect to those who often do not receive it, and that they facilitate community networking. So those interpersonal connections are so important. And then I can't be remiss without talking about NMSU Library briefly, if I may. We have the Emerging Technologies Lab that's open to the public, programming, computer services, global chat for reference, free consultations on preserving family letters and nonprofit organizations' letters. Thinking about federal funding. When we think of federal funding for libraries, the first thing that comes to mind for me was the LSTA funding, because that's that primary federal funder. But there are other federal funded programs for libraries. So at NMSU, we had a NEH grant to digitize the Amador family papers from the 19th and 20th century. Is when this family was active in the community. And that funding was cut recently. Luckily, they're at the end of this National Endowment for the Humanities grant. But so there are other sources as well. And I have a lot more, but
yeah,
it looks like you have more questions for me.
It's just the tip of the iceberg, and you talked about so many different types of libraries, and I'll kind of go back to the beginning of the program with our fellow Abigail Salas, who visited the library in Chaparral. You talked with the library in Baird. These are, very rural libraries, and of course there are many of those across New Mexico. And you mentioned earlier that, the greatest impact, and when we hear about cuts of federal funding to agencies across the board, we kind of hear again and again, and that counts for public media as well, about the rural communities being impacted the most. Why is that the case with libraries?
Well, several reasons, but the main thing when we're thinking about federal funding and loss thereof is what funds LST funding is for what in New Mexico. So the state library has a great breakdown on their website. 56% of their rural services are funded by LSTA. And rural services is several areas. There are bookmobiles. We have 3 bookmobile routes in the state of New Mexico that they serve over 100 stops. And I think it's that schedule's either once every 2 weeks or once a month, and they stop at these very, very rural areas of the state. But 56% of their funding is from LSTA. There's also the program Books by Mail, and that's for homebound people that live in New Mexico that are homebound and maybe physically impaired and are not close to a public library nor a bookmobile bookstop. And also for the those who are visually impaired. So the state library actually sends them books by mail, pre-postage, that they then return back. And so that program is part of rural services as well, really impacting underserved communities, and some of which are very rural. And then El Portal databases that we have in New Mexico are available for everybody. They're funded with 31% of their funding comes from LSTA funds as well. So think about those communities where they have e-resources are expensive, database subscriptions are expensive. The LSTA funding provides this for everybody, right?
Let's talk about those who are advocating for libraries and library services, the associations that exist. You're a former board member of the New Mexico Library Association, a member of the American Library Association. And while it's important to point out that you are not here speaking on behalf of those organizations today or New Mexico State University, that you have a really in-depth knowledge of what those associations do to support libraries across the state and across the country. Let's talk a little bit about those efforts.
Oh, I'd be really happy to. So NMLA, which is the New Mexico Library Association, they stand for New Mexico Libraries and Librarians in New Mexico. They're very active with looking into increasing funding for libraries. There's a legislative committee. And they had at one point, perhaps still do, but I'm not positive, a lobbyist that would go to state legislator and advocate for libraries. So the NMLA is a great resource for what to do locally to support libraries. The American Library Association is national, right? American Library Association, but it's the largest library association in the world. And there are quite a few international members as well, so beyond the United States. But ALA is the place to go for the latest on what's happening with libraries. One area that is where libraries are really struggling are with book bans, for example.
All right, well, I'm glad you brought it up. Something I definitely wanted to take a little bit of time with today. In terms of the scope of what we're seeing across the country, in our military academies, how have those efforts to remove certain books from shelves of libraries across the country impacted New Mexico at this point, or have they?
Oh, that's a great question. I know that there were, within the past several years, there were at least 2 banned book proposals that came up in the school districts of the area.
Seems to be more on a maybe local level.
Yes, and what's really fascinating, and maybe I don't have a lot of information on this topic specifically regarding the schools to really comment on it. So maybe I'll to talk more broadly about banned books and what's happening.
Sure.
I saw some interesting numbers that I think was for 2024. 72% of the groups behind banning books were organized groups, government bodies, and concerted efforts. Whereas I think just 12% were parents. And this is referring to banned books in public schools and in public libraries. And those numbers have really increased since the overall number of banned books from 2020, which I think across the nation, the titles were like in the 200 titles range. From 2020 until now, it's skyrocketed the number of banned books across the nation.
And these would, in many cases, be books that we probably grew up reading, that were integral parts of our own childhood or teen years, right? Yes.
There's quite a few, and also some newer stuff coming up. As I'm blinking to come up with names right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've just seen, books like To Kill a Mockingbird,
yes,
perhaps,
To Kill a Mockingbird.
or
there you go.
There are many titles that are on that list of books that we would certainly have great familiarity with and wonder, about the future. So why don't you explain your role as an associate professor at New Mexico State University? I certainly would have been among those that thought that you were educating the next generation of librarians.
Well, I'm actually behind the scenes currently. I'm a cataloging librarian. So if you were to wish to access physical resources at the library, and if you were to use the computer, go to the catalog, if you can find it, that means that myself and my team in cataloging are doing our jobs. So it's all about increasing access and description of the resources. They don't just magically appear when you're trying to do online retrieval of something. There are people behind the scenes that put in those records and make sure that they're accessible.
Well, thank you for doing that. Tell us a little bit with the time we have left. You're also a researcher. What are your areas of interest in terms of research?
Well, currently I've been very passionate about supporting those new to the profession, specifically regarding academic librarianship. It can be very challenging to go into the field. There are a small number of opportunities and lots of competition. It's apparently a very popular field to go into. So I have been looking into how to support those new to the profession to show the data that's out there, just make sure they're making realistic decisions on, and if they want to pursue academic librarianship, what are some of the challenges that they face?
NMSU cataloging librarian and associate professor Aubrey Iglesias, thank you so much for making the time to be with us. It's great having you.
So happy to be here. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Fronteras, A Changing America here on KRWG Public Media.